The first book that I have to review is Murder Road by Simone St. James. Now, I will say that I don't think that this is going to be a book for everyone. It does have a certain trope in there that I personally really like, although it's a trope that I've heard other people saying they really dislike this aspect. In Murder Road, we are following a couple who has just gotten married and they are traveling to go on their honeymoon. They end up passing through this small town, and on the highway there is a girl who is hitchhiking, and they end up picking this girl up, and turns out she is mortally wounded and she ends up dying in their car. They take this girl to the hospital, the police come, and of course this couple is then suspected of her murder, and the police are investigating if this couple has killed this girl. The book then becomes a mystery where they are trying to prove their innocence and what is going on in this town. I really liked the opening of this book. Pretty much the synopsis that I just gave you is the first chapter. I hate when like a thriller opens up with a ton of exposition just being dumped in my lap, because to me, exposition and character background and like building, like world building type of thing is just so boring. So something I love about this book is the way that it just hit the ground running and there is action like from page one. I definitely drifted in and out a few times while reading this. There was a couple of lulls for me, but something I really enjoyed about Simone St. James' writing was that she did a really good job of consistently throwing in different unexpected twists and curveballs that would pull me back in. This book has sort of like a urban legend, small town, folklore twist, edge to it. So if you are a person that does not like for your books to have any sort of like otherworldly or supernatural influence in there, and you want it to be fully based in reality, this is not a book for you. So for example, if you read Riley Sager's The House Across the Lake and you really hated that book, like for the twist, if you didn't get along with that sort of story, then I don't think you would like this. But for me, I love any sort of supernatural like plot in a story, so that really was something I enjoyed about this one. I could definitely see myself reading from this author in the future. This was a pretty enjoyable one for me. The next new release that I've recently read is Kill for Me, Kill for You by Steve Kavanaugh. I was actually lucky enough to find this book at a Little Free Library, and so as soon as I brought that book home from the Little Free Library, I started reading it. This book has incredible ratings on Goodreads, especially for thrillers. It is very, very rare to find a thriller that is this highly rated, that has the general consensus that people enjoy it. I feel like thrillers are so divisive. Now, I will say that around 10% into this book, I wasn't feeling super engaged, and that is usually around the time when I will DNF a book. But I was so curious by the very, very high ratings on Goodreads. I'll say from 40% on to the end, I was very engaged and interested, and I wanted to see where it was gonna go. There was a couple of twists that I could see coming. There was a couple that I did not predict, and I liked that. I like how this author played around with different timelines, different storylines, and it was very interesting. I liked this one, so I did rate it 4 stars. The next book, This Wretched Valley by Jenny Kiefer. I was very highly anticipating this one because it is a survival horror. We're following a group of adventurers who are going to hike in the Kentucky wilderness and rock climb this new cliff face that they have discovered. They're gonna go like map this rock face. What happens is when they get out there, they kind of get lost in the wilderness and can't get out. I am so interested of stories where people get lost in the wilderness. I just find it so claustrophobic. I find that's instantly scary to me, is when I'm imagining myself lost in the middle of the woods and you're seeing weird things in the trees, hearing funny noises, and your group is starting to go stir crazy and you don't know if you can trust each other. That to me is very, very scary. So I really, really enjoyed this book. I thought that the horror was excellent. So there is a element of this that is kind of based in real events, or at least draws parallels to that real event. And the horror that was around that to me was very scary. Okay, so I rated this book a 4 out of 5 star. But this is one of those books that the more and more that it sits with me, the longer I think about it. This is one of those very rare books that I am considering bumping up my rating to a full 5. That's very rare where I want to raise my rating on a book. Normally, the longer it sits with me, the more that I want to lower the rating. This is a book that I would really love to see get nominated for the Goodreads Horror 2024 category, like the Goodreads Choice Awards 2024 category for horror. I would really love to see this book be nominated for that. I feel like her storytelling, her descriptions were so well done and like well crafted and visceral and scary and gory. I really like this, and I feel like I've seen kind of like mixed reviews coming in on this one, but for me, it was great. The horror was so scary, and more than anything, it was very, very well written, amazing imagery and descriptions. So the book is set in Kentucky, and this author is actually from Kentucky, and she actually is a owner of an indie bookstore, and actually a horror themed indie bookstore. I believe her bookstore is called Butcher Cabin Books, and I will go ahead and pop up a picture on the screen here so you can see, because this bookstore looks so cool. I absolutely have to visit this bookstore at some point in the future. Like, this is on my bucket list. I recommend this book to you guys. I think it is a phenomenal horror book. The next new release I recently read is The Black Girl Survives in this one, and this is an anthology. I really struggle with short story collections. I have a really hard time sometimes like getting into a book, and the first quarter of a book is always the hardest for me. And with short story collections, you have to restart and do that like labor of trying to picture everything, get oriented in the story so many different times. So that's why I struggle with anthologies, but this one, I really wanted to read this. I really wanted to like it. I love that this book features all women of color storytellers. All of the horror stories in this book are featuring young Black women who not only survive, but also overcome. I would love to see more anthologies like this in the future. And I know that there are other short story collections that feature Black authors. I do have on my list to read the anthology Out There Screaming. Now, overall, I rated this collection a 4 out of 5 stars. On my Goodreads, I do have an individual rating and review for each of the short stories in this book. So I will go ahead and leave my Goodreads review linked below if you are interested in any of the individual stories. As a whole, I do think that this collection was very well done. I do have a couple favorites. I had one 5-star short story in this whole collection, but I do have a couple that I rated 4.5. Like I said, if you are interested in the individual reviews, go ahead and check out the link in the description to my Goodreads. The next new release that I've recently read is That's Not My Name by Megan Lally. This is a thriller, and similar to Kill for Me, Kill for You that we spoke about earlier, this book also has very high ratings for a thriller. So I was very intrigued. Once again, I wanted to give this one a try. I love the title. I think we all know what song that title reminds us of, and it definitely got stuck in my head as I was reading this book. This book also, similar to Murder Road, the very first book that I talked about in this video, where it opens up with like a banger, where it immediately catches your attention. That's how this book opens up. It opens up with a young girl. A police officer ends up finding her on the side of the road, taking her into the police station and trying to figure out who she is. Not long after that, a man walks into the police station claiming to be this young girl's father. And the police officer asks the young girl, okay, do you want to stay with him? He seems legit. And she says yes, because she's cold, she's dirty, she's exhausted, she's bruised. She doesn't know what happened to her, but she trusts this man because she sees these pictures on his phone that look like her, right? So she says, yes, I will stay with him. And the police officer says, okay, you can stay. Here's my card if you run into anything, and I will be back to check up on you to make sure that you are okay. So he leaves, and then the girl settles in. That is where the book progresses from there, is this girl living in this house with this man and trying to get her memories back and figure out how did she get here. Now, this book does flip perspectives. We are flipping to the perspective of a teenage boy going through some struggles because his girlfriend has recently gone missing. And all of the people around him, his friends, like the townspeople, the teachers at his school, they think he did it. They think he did something to this girl, and he is the reason why she has gone missing. I really did enjoy this one, but what I really liked about it was the girl's perspective. I was so hooked when we were following her perspective. However, as soon as we would switch to the guy, I did not like following his perspective because there was such a dissonance in these two POVs. And as soon as we'd flip to his perspective, I felt like the writing style changed so much, became so immature. Everyone around him, like everyone's reactions, the dialogue, it was just reading so unbelievably over the top. I also found his portions a lot of the time to be very boring, very unnecessary, and honestly, I had to start skimming his portions. So that was why, even though as a whole, I really liked a lot of this, I couldn't rate this book higher than a 3 because I really hated reading a whole half of this book. But I understand why. I understand why we had both of these perspectives. And you will understand when you get to the end why we needed them both in order for the twist to come together. And the twist was good. I did not see that twist coming. So you know what? The more I talk about this, the more I want to raise the rating to a 4 because it was good, you know? I just really hated the dude Drew, the male perspective. I really did not like reading it. Also, he narrated the epilogue chapter. Like, no, this book should have had the girl narrating the epilogue chapter because I feel like this was her story, and that bothered me. Okay, the epilogue chapter in general bothered me. I don't want to give any more because I don't want to spoil, but there's another aspect of that, of the ending, that like was so unnecessary to me. Like, why did we didn't need that, you know? Like, that wasn't even realistic. And if you're curious what I'm talking about, you can ask me in the comments, I'll tell you, or you can check out my Goodreads review. But overall, if you guys like thrillers, I think this one is worth your time. I can totally understand why it is very, very highly rated on Goodreads. The next new release I've recently read is It Watches in the Dark by Jeff Strand. This book was phenomenal. This is a middle grade horror, and it was legitimately terrifying. Most adult horror novels are not even as scary as this book was. I really want to read more books from this author, Jeff Strand, because I did read my first book by him last year, and that was Clowns vs. Spiders, which I also really enjoyed, found that book to be such a fun time. I need to read more from this author because I think he is really good at writing horror. We are following a family who is going on this adventure kayaking, and quickly this trip that they're taking together turns into a nightmare. In a very Hansel and Gretel-like twist, the siblings end up stumbling upon this mysterious town in the middle of the wilderness. And the townspeople are very, very, very nice, but they're also weird. They're a little weird, and their reactions tend to be overreactions, and you instantly start getting creeped out. There's a lot of red flags that start popping up, and that is what was really, really freaking me out, was the adults in this situation. I was absorbed in this story. I feel like this author did such a good job crafting a very claustrophobic atmosphere. I like reading spooky middle grade horror, However, sometimes I get frustrated when the main characters tend to read a bit immature or a bit ridiculous. But in this book, I did not find that to be the case. The characters to me read very level-headed and mature for the situation that they were in, and their decision making was very level-headed. However, they still read like kids at the same time. So I really appreciated that the characters were not annoying. Overall, this is one of the best horror middle grade books that I've read in recent months, and yeah, I definitely will read more books from Jeff Strand in the future. The next new release I've recently read is The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Katherine Arden. I was so hyped to read this. I will say this is probably my most anticipated release of 2024 because this is Katherine Arden's first adult fiction release since she has written the Winter Night trilogy, which is my favorite series of all time. I love that series so much. She's an amazing writer. So I actually pre-ordered this one, and I was actually lucky enough to be able to buddy read this book with my friend Emily Good, who also has a channel on here. I will go ahead and leave Emily's channel linked in the description. So if you want to check out her thoughts and feelings on this book, definitely make sure you subscribe to her channel so you can see what she thought about this book. I did end up really enjoying this one. Now, I ended up reading this book a 4 out of 5 stars. While I did really enjoy this, I am very conscious of the fact that I feel like I was a very biased reviewer because I went into this book already having a very developed relationship with this author where I kind of felt like whatever it was going to be about, I was probably going to like it anyways because I really love the other things that I have read from her in the past. So I don't know, for instance, if this book had been written by a different author, would I have even have read it? I don't know. This is a book that is set around World War II, which I will say that is a subject matter that I really tend to stay away from. I don't enjoy, for the most part, reading about World War II or either of the world wars. The Warm Hands of Ghosts, similar to her Winter Night trilogy, is a historical fiction with heavy fantasy, magical realism elements thrown in there. And I think that Katherine Arden writes fantasy so well, and that is my favorite parts of this book, is the fantasy and more like supernatural, otherworldly elements to this. If there is one thing that I could point at in particular that would be a critique here, I was a little bit underwhelmed by the ending of this book. It wrapped up quite quickly and quite conveniently for the characters, and I felt like maybe there could have been a little bit more. I just felt like for the story that I had read, it seemed like everybody got off a little bit too easily. There was a very well-written author's note at the end of this book where Katherine Arden goes into her inspirations behind the more fantasy elements of this book and why she wanted to write this, and I really had a deeper appreciation for this after the author's note at the end, so I really did enjoy that. As a whole, 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed this one. It's a book that's definitely going to stay on my shelf, and I will definitely continue reading from this author in the future. The final new release that I have recently read that I have to talk about in this video is Piglet by Lottie Hazel. This is a literary fiction. I was primarily intrigued in this book for that title and that cover. And then I went to Goodreads, I read the blurb. It says this is a debut about women's ambition and appetites and the truth about having it all. I don't read a ton of literary fiction or contemporary works. I did go into this book very blind. The only thing I knew about it was the title, the cover, and then that super brief blurb that I read you from Goodreads. You are watching this main character continuing down this destructive path, and it can be frustrating to read at times because you're kind of screaming at her not to do this. You're watching her thought process and seeing her family and understanding maybe why she would continue down this path and the influences in her life pushing her down that direction, and groping with her fractured relationship with herself and with food. I would definitely give a trigger warning in this book for binge eating. That is something that this character deals with. and as somebody who has also dealt with binge eating, I appreciated that portrayal. I connected with this main character at points. At times, this book was really funny, especially towards the end and the climax scene. That was very, very dramatic. As a whole, I rated this book a 4 out of 5 star. I don't really read a lot from this genre, but I thought that this book had a lot going for it, a good mix of humor and with the more serious topics, and as a whole, if this is one that you have been looking at and had your eye on, I would recommend it. The way that I had been filming my monthly wrap-up videos in the past, every month I would share with you guys the books that I read that month, and I would split it up into 2 separate videos. I would talk about my favorites in one video and my least favorites in one video. However, this year in 2024, I have been really holding myself accountable for my own reading enjoyment. If I am not enjoying a book, then I quit reading it. What I've realized is I'm not going to be able to continue filming my wrap-up videos the way that I have been in the past, for the simple reason that I'm not going to have least favorites generally anymore. The way that I have decided that I am going to have to move forward with my wrap-up videos is you probably will not get monthly wrap-up videos from me anymore. I think what I will be doing going forward is saving up the books that I have read in categories. If you aren't interested in nonfiction, then you can just skip that video, you know? Or if you aren't interested in horror, but you are interested in nonfiction, then you can skip that video and just watch the other one. If you guys have anything that you would really love to see from me, if you would really love to see me review a certain category, I would love to do ones even a little bit more creative, like all of the Fever Dream books that I've read recently. Books kind of with a focus on magical realism or that read very surreal. I have a whole list of those very weird books because that is a subgenre that I really enjoy. If you guys have anything very off the wall, weird, creative like that you would like to see me focus on, please let me know. I have a lot of ideas right now, but yeah, just a little PSA that my wrap-up videos will be changing a little bit. If you have read any of the books that I talked about in this video, let me know what was your thoughts on that. I also would like to say, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, I would really love to invite you to subscribe. I know it is super annoying to put this little self-promotion in a video and ask you guys to subscribe, but it really does help me. It helps my channel grow, it helps me to create more videos and for those videos to reach a wider audience. So please take a minute, if you have not already, to subscribe to my channel. I would appreciate it so much. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.